Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Let me make sure.
Wiped out right now, but I'm good.
I know that's how it is sometimes. We be busy. I know
Yeah.
exactly how it is. I'm trying to make
Does
sure I
this allow me to change my background? I'm trying to look at the options here, or add a background screen.
probably not on here unless you have your
Okay.
own.
No. Okay.
Let me make sure. Good evening. We're gonna get started in a minute. I just want to make sure that we get this public.
Sure.
Um, So we're going to give our other few guests a few minutes to come on in before we get started. Our
Sure.
actual time to start is 6:30.
Right.
So we give it just a few more minutes. Let me see. I just want to make sure it's public where everybody can see it.
Sure.
So how are you this evening? You doing
I
good?
am
Thank you.
tired.
Thank you for making it. I mean, I know it's hard trying to maneuver life and then take your time and come on. Like it's such a blessing to have you guys um come on. I'm really grateful to have you take out your time and even consider coming on this Facebook Live. So
Well, and we appreciate the opportunity. Likewise, there are things that we would like to do, and you never know when you open yourself up to opportunities, what those opportunities will yield down the road.
oh
So
yeah.
we thank you for thinking that we might have some content that people might want to listen to.
Okay. And that's what it's about, making sure that we get the content and the message out there.
Right.
Um, so it's a blessing to be able to have something that you have that's a gift.
Okay.
Somebody might want to hear.
So Cynthia is your niece. So who is your mom or dad? I mean, you're Cynthia's niece.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
who is your mom or dad to Cynthia? Is it your mom or your dad? That's your parent.
my aunt.
Your aunt.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So my mom was at the event that
Okay.
you guys had. So yeah, she was there, little short lady. So I don't know if you will remember her. I'll tag the picture and show you the
Okay.
picture,
Okay.
and maybe that'll help. I'm just
Yeah.
making sure this is public. Hold on, let me make sure this is public. Okay, it's public, so we on good.
All right. Did your mom bring a friend with her? Because I know that was one of um, Cynthia's sisters that had a friend with her.
Okay, so that's my other aunt. So my
Okay.
mother had my cousin. She's like short,
Okay.
brown skin lady. That's my other aunt.
Okay. All right. All
Mhm.
right.
Yeah. So yeah. So yeah.
And so my son went to high school. They're a year apart with Philip,
Mhm.
and so my son is a journalist and Philip is a journalist.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They both came out of Renaissance a year apart. Philip is a
Well,
year older.
well, we're on. Your son is Omari the second. So
Yep.
that's a little bit about Mr. Sankofa. But we are actually on live now.
Okay. Okay.
It's me and you on here. So we're gonna. I guess since you're the first person on and you were on time, you could kind of maybe give a little background about yourself and since you're the chief, the head honcho for the scout group that you have. So I guess kind of can you tell, and also hey guys, if you coming on here, please share, like, tag, tag your friends, invite them on. We have some very important information we would love for you guys to hear tonight. So please invite your friends, invite your family, and come on. And Mr. Sankofa, you can invite. It should be on your page as well.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, but since you're on, we got to know who this Mr. Sankofa is. I mean, who is he? Scoutmaster? Who are you?
You know, I guess I'm a lot of things. You know, Scoutmaster being one of them, and I came into scouting. See, my oldest son is 29, and he was 6 years old when we started scouting. And my wife, who's in the room with me, she's responsible for me being in scouting because that was not my plan to do scouting. And so, what 23 years later, I'm still here. And what I found in scouting is that it really duplicates what our traditional culture has valued in terms of child rearing. And when you dig into the real history of scouting, you will find out that the founder of scouting, Baden Powell, a lot of what he put into scouting came from his experience in Africa. He was part of the British military. He was a soldier. Became a ranked officer, and he was involved in, I guess you would call, the colonization in Southern Africa, and as part of one of the British forces. But he saw what Africans were doing with their young men, and he took a lot of those things and he put those into the scouting program.
And that's amazing because um you like me growing up, I didn't know a lot of Boy Scouts, but I knew a lot of Girl Scouts. And I don't know,
Yeah,
maybe because I was a female, they were always selling the Girl Scout cookies or whatever.
right.
But it wasn't really publicized like the Girl Scouts. It was like, join the Girl Scout. So, I mean, just to know that, we do have a lot of African American young men and fathers who are involved in the Boy Scouts, and what you guys are doing and raising young men is amazing. And your son, your son, as you were saying earlier about your son went through the program as well.
Both my sons
Okay.
went through the program. Omari, the elder son, and Malik, the younger son. And so when they started the program, you couldn't actually join the scout program until you were 6 years old. And that was the age that you can join as a tiger. Once upon a time, they had a 5-year-old program, which was for lions. They brought that back. But when he was there, they didn't have lions. So he started at the age of 3.
Wow.
Because when I brought my oldest son, he was already friends with the oldest son's friends who were older than him, and he was never a baby. He was always older than everybody else at his age, and so he became a Cub Scout he was a Tiger for 3 years, and so both of them are Eagle Scouts. They went all the way through the program.
Wow. Wow. And how old are they now?
Malik is 26, and Omari is 29.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I know they can tell so many stories, and just, the topic is train up a child, and just to have that involvement, you don't have a lot of African American homes where the father is in the house, but to have the father that is involved,
Right.
it's like, hey, you're hands on, you in there with them. And also, one thing I did like is that your troop was part of your church, right?
Right.
Yeah. So can you
Absolutely.
tell a little bit about that and how churches can get involved with their youth?
Well, so I will talk about the model that was used by the Mormon Church for example. Up until recent years, the youth program for the Mormon Church was scouting. That was it. They had Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and that was their program. And so in my experience, like not too many years after high school, I started going back to my high school and talking to students at the high school. In college, I was very active student in college, and so there was always this activity that was going on, and so I was involved in mentoring programs. I've been a mentor. I mean, I think 3 or 4 different programs that I was a mentor, including Big Brothers Big Sisters, and nothing duplicates what scouting does. I mean, they can try, and there's some very good mentoring programs, but when you talk about fathers who are being involved in scouting with their sons, you can't duplicate that. And that is the way that if you go back to our roots in Africa, that's how young people were raised. The men at a certain age, the young men left and went with the men to be brought into manhood. The young women, the same thing. And so when you understand the history of scouting and you know why it's like that, is that Baden Powell based it on his experience in Africa.
Wow.
And so yeah, like if we could adopt it like the Mormon Church adopts scouting, I think it would be a benefit. I think I love mentoring programs. Don't get me wrong, but we, in my role as a scoutmaster, thinking about my son who started at age 6 and age 3, what that translates to is that I have relationships with young men who are not my sons, who I have seen from the whole path of, from age 5 to now they're young adults and have families now. And so actually, I just got my birthday was the other day, and I got a text from one of them, and his text was, "Happy birthday, Father Sankofa." But
wow. Wow. I know that makes you feel good just to know, the influence that somebody else's child will call you father.
Yeah, I mean it's tremendous. It's and it's I'm grateful that my wife made me do it.
Come on, wife. Look, he that findeth a wife. Also, that's another Facebook. Findeth a good thing. So I met you. My aunt was actually, her son went through the program, as well as he went on the trip with you guys to Africa.
Right.
And I was so impressed, with the pictures that she took. She's an amazing photographer, and
yes,
she took these amazing pictures while she was there. And she was talking about the women and how they got changed their names and everything. And she's not feeling well, and so she said she's not going to be in the camera, but she is on. And Alu is on. I see you, Alu. You kept going in and out. But we know that you're on, so you can turn your camera on. Hi, Alu. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here. Hey, brother. I was having some technical difficulties. I'm driving, so I'm like, wait, let me jump on. Okay. Ron texted me, and I'm like, yeah, let me jump on quick.
Okay, be careful driving now.
Yeah, that's why my camera is off.
Yeah. I just wanted to say hi to everybody.
Yes,
that's really great.
That's Cynthia Ellis, who I was speaking of. So while you're on,
so you claim Cynthia still?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said she's claiming you.
No, barely. I think barely.
Well, since she's on, while you're on. I wanted you to briefly tell the experience that your son had kind of tell about that experience that he had going to Africa on a trip, and your experience with the women. Briefly tell us a little bit about that. Cynthia.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excuse my voice. Really, I feel terrible right now. Yeah, I mean, I'll just make it really quick. It was an amazing experience, I believe, for everybody who went on the trip. And I was just, I was not only happy for Caden to be a part of it, I was happy to be a part of it, and just to see the other young boys and the other parents, the other moms to be a part of the experience. It was just amazing. It was our first time going to Africa. And but just to go back with the troop, just to start there, like the troop 647 is amazing. The leaders are amazing. And I'm really happy that Caden had an opportunity to be a part of the program. It really feels like a family, and then to transcend and going over to Africa and feel that same feel like family over there as well, I think was like really great. So Caden's experience, I mean, I wish I would have known. I could have had him come on and he could have spoke for himself, but I believe it was like a really good experience for him. I mean, I'll put it like this: like he just had to or he's working on submitting his applications to colleges, and he used his experience over in Africa as his essay. And so that made me proud that he actually did that. Yeah, but just seeing the growth, yeah, just his growth has been like really great. And the women over there, just they welcomed us. We danced with them. Let me think what else. I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know, kind of like a lost of word, probably because I don't really feel that great. But I thought that the ceremony, like, so when we first arrived, which is part of Caden's essay as well, like when we first arrived to Pinyin Village, it was just really, well, before we even got there, to just arrive in Senegal and go to the point of no return and experience all of that, and then get on a bus, a very tight fitted bus with everybody for I think it was about 7 hours, right?
It was, yeah.
That was amazing.
Might have a better idea of the time.
And Alou made things happen for us to make sure we got to where we needed to be on time. And then when we just arrived, like to Pinyin Village, just to see like everyone dancing, welcoming us, like while we were on the bus, and we danced and marched over to this tree where there was a ceremony where all of the boys received African names and were adopted by African families. I just thought that was like really amazing. And then we had dinner with the families, and the whole rites of passage. And I'm sure they'll speak to that when they speak. Just the whole rites of passage program, because that's really what brought us over there. And to see the boys go through that, and maybe Alou will even speak to when he went through the rites of passage program when he was a kid. Yeah, so I don't know, just overall it was just a really great experience.
And just to think, although it's Boy Scouts, some of the mothers went too, so it was like they were actually, it was hands-on for them, and I think that's a good experience because from what you were telling me, I mean, it changed your life as well.
Well, the thing about going back to the troop though in general, I mean, we're all welcome, which I think that's where it goes back to just family. Because it really does take a family, it takes a village. And we've, as mothers, like we've always been welcome to participate in all different types of activities. So there was nothing different when we went over to Africa.
Wow, that is amazing. So Alou, so since Alou is driving, I want Alou to chime in right quick, because I don't know if he's pulled over or if he's still on the road. But Alou, thank you for coming on. And I wanted you to share your induction, you know, how you got into the program, and what role you play in this rites of passage going back to Africa.
He's the
So
original
thank you
key.
very much for that. I will let what do you call again? Omar, what were you saying?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought you said
Oh,
something.
I said you're the original. You're the key that opened up the door.
Yeah. So what happened is that back in '93, Dr. Pearson, who was very fundamental in starting this program,
And Dr.
brought
Emmanuel
some boys.
Pearson is from Hartford Church.
Okay, in Detroit, Harvard Church,
In
Detroit.
Detroit.
Yes, in Detroit, and he was also vice president of student services at my alma mater, Oakland University. So he was very instrumental in starting this program. So when he brought these boys to Banjul, I was out of my office, and then when I came back, I was told, "Hey, somebody came here with this group of boys, blah blah blah," and they went to the Rites of Passage. And I'm like, "Where did they do it?" They say Banjul. I'm like, "That's not authentic. We got to take this to the village." So fast forward, we had conversations with Dr. Pearson, and he's like, "You think your village would?" I said, "Yeah, they would." So I talked to the people in the village, and the folks were very excited that these are our lost brothers who want to come back and connect with our culture and our tradition and the rites of passage. Because when I went through it myself as a teenager, um, we were in the bush for over 60 days, between 60 and 90 days, going through this initiation. And we're introduced to a lot of things, including community service and so many other things that, like we say, what happens in the bush stays in the bush. So I'm not going to reveal everything that we did there. Um, so fast forward the next year, the group is here. And here I'm connected with Ron. Our brotherhood started being cemented from that get-go. And now that the elders who started this program has passed on, so Ron and I keep holding the fort, making sure that what has been built, the foundation that has been built, continues to support our young people, because I think for me and for the young people, it's life changing. It allows these young men to compare and contrast first Detroit and Africa. That's one. But going through the Gore Island to the door of no return, going through the bus, having that experience, losing the luxury of what you have at home versus, okay, now this life is challenging. This is what other people live like. This is normal for people outside of the United States. I think it's a huge learning experience. And I think one thing that I would say, and I told the boys when we were on the bus, is that this is the farming season. People, it's the rainy season, and so people would actually, the rain runs from June to October, and after that, when the rain falls, everybody's busy in their bush, in their farms. But they're gonna stop everything and come for you, 13 of you.
Hmm.
And I didn't think they believed me at the beginning. But when we got to the village, you see hundreds of people.
Wow.
And the day they were coming out, you even see thousands of people. They stopped whatever they're doing for them. And that's what community is all about. That's what family is about. And that's the village is all about. When it takes a village, you'll have to go to Africa and see the reality of what that means.
Whoa, I felt that in my spirit just by you saying that, because I think that a lot of our kids are so spoiled here, and just to be in an environment as well, all of this electronics and all of this stuff, you got to put that stuff down, and then they get to see a different culture and also that welcoming sense. I think that is so powerful. Now, I think I don't know who wants to chime in on this, but somebody has to explain what a rites of passage is with,
All right, so
in context that you can explain it without telling too much, because I know it's a secrecy to it.
well,
So I would
here's
say
my
a
sense
little
too.
bit.
Rice let me jump in real quick, Alu, because I was going to say that this really kind of dovetails into Ron's position in this whole story, because this runs back more than 20 years. As Alu said, it was in the 90s that Dr. Pearson first started coming over to Africa and taking boys to Africa. And so Ron Spears was involved in the Hartford's mentoring program. So I think that would be a perfect opportunity for Ron to now chime in.
Hey, Ron, you made it on. I know he had a event and he was coming on a little bit late.
Yeah, but I see him in, so maybe he's still tied up. I thought he might be ready.
Yep, he's not. So I guess one of you guys can go ahead and tell, and then we'll get Ron in a little bit. He said about 7. Yeah, so we'll get.
Okay. So Hartford had a mentoring program, CAFO and Kentucky, a male and female mentoring program. That was the initial visit to Africa by Dr. Pearson, was to bring some boys over to have a rites of passage program that grew into CAFO and Kentucky and rites of passage. And part of the rites of passage program included the young people going to Africa. The young people, the young men typically went to the village to have their rites of passage, and the young women did something similar, but they did their experience was in Egypt, and so they did this for years. And one of the things that was happening is that, and so the scoutmaster that was there before me, Jasper Lindsay, was a scoutmaster at Hartford for more than 30 years. So his involvement pre-existed CAFO and Kentucky. And his involvement was that, hey, you all are coming to the scout program to teach these young men scout skills that are going to Africa. Why don't you run this program, the mentoring program, through scouting? And that would be, Boy Scouting and Girl Scouting for that matter. And there was discussion about that very thing happening. And things changed in the world. Politically, there was war. There was all kind of things that happened, and so the trips to Africa stopped. Ron was one of as a young man, was one of the adult leaders in the scout program at that time. Fast forward, Ron is in a position out of the church where he's leading that program. So we had been talking about going back to Africa to do it again. And actually, we started pre-COVID. We had a discussion with the scoutmaster before me, where he had retired from scoutmastering, but this is before he had passed away. Jasper Lindsay, myself, Alu and Yasi, and Dwayne Eason. And Dwayne and Ron were involved in the CAFO and Kentucky program. Lou was from the village, and I was there representing scouting. And so it was the idea that we were going to bring the program together and replicate what they were doing and take the young men to Africa. But life happens, and so we didn't do that trip again until last year. So Alu, and maybe you recall, what was the gap between the last group that went to Africa and when we went last year? The time gap.
Yeah, so the last group that went was in 2001. Okay. So after 9/11, because of 9/11, the world was not stable to take boys across the Atlantic. And so things stopped at the time. So just like Amari said, Pastor Adams, Christian, actually engaged us and said, hey, we need to start taking our boys back. And we're like, okay, but where do we get the boys? And then Ron is like, hey, Omari got the boys. We got the Boy Scouts. We can start it back with that group. And when COVID hit, we couldn't do anything. But one of the fundamentals of the rites of passage is, especially for the Jola ethnic group, the tribe that I come from, where we take the boys, is that you cannot get married as a male unless you go through the rites of passage.
Wow.
That is kind of the transition from being a boy to a man. And
say
so all of us
got it mixed up. Now come on, say that one more time, because we need that in American tradition, so we can get men that are men, right?
Right, exactly. Yep. So you definitely cannot get married unless you go through this rites of passage and go through the transition. And that's the power of this journey, because now you have been exposed to what does it mean to be a man? What is my responsibility as a man? But just like Omari said, when the program started, we were only dealing with the boys to the Gambia, and then the girls were going to Egypt. And then we made a little change, and we started taking the girls also to the Gambia. We took a couple of groups with the boys and girls as well. And then in 2001, everything stopped until 11 years later. Then we were able to take another group of boys. That was last year. But I think the power of this initiation is the experience that the boys went through. I think for me, the most powerful part of this program is having these boys, young men, adapted to different families and going through the naming ceremony. And I think one of the boys said that the love that they were able to get and the protection that they were able to feel from their new families were very powerful.
Wow. And some of them they're able to still keep, connections with those families, right?
Yes. And I think I would share one thing, because one of the boys, I think one or two of them, which was very powerful, is we have our own WhatsApp chat group. And then one of the young men, because this was Ramadan in the Gambia, people fast from sunrise to sunset, and he wanted to contribute to his family. So he asked for the information on how to send money over there to his family so that they can support themselves during this month of Ramadan. And he made the transfer. And I think that was heartwarming for me to know that this young man, who was born and raised Christian, now went to the Gambia, got introduced to a new family, but understood that this family is also a different faith. And this is the most important month in their faith. And I want to contribute to them. And I think that was very, 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 very powerful for me.
And I think, just the expression of love and support cannot be emphasized more. There is a Christian church in the village, and I just remember this very powerful moment. I just I think about it. We were sitting with the church members and the Muslim brothers who are the majority in the village, and Deacon Harold Holmes, who's from our church. And we were sitting there and we were making plans of how we would get together to rebuild this church. How will we carry out a project? And so we were sitting under the tree, and I just could not help but be taken by the fact that, when we look at our history and we think about it, Kunta Kinte be looking at roots, was Muslim. Kunta Kinte, according to how Alex Haley tells the story, was captured during his rites of passage.
Mm.
And so when so I've made this journey back over, and sitting under this tree, and I'm making plans, and I just was amazed of how full circle moment it became. It came to me that that the issue was not an issue of religion. It was an issue of, hey, we're brothers. How are we going to help each other in this moment? And it was a very powerful. And, I think rites of passages is so necessary. Because what we are getting through popular culture is passing as rites of passage, whether we recognize it or not. But it is, and there are some standards that are being set that are not healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And scouting is a program that, I mean, I'm a better father because of scouting.
Wow, that's good. Now, what if your church? Now, so Hartford is in Detroit, but what if your church does not have a scout group? Like to kind of implement what you guys are doing. How does that happen?
If a church does not have a scout group,
yeah.
So let me. They can come over to Hartford. we are recruiting.
But I live in Atlanta. I live in Georgia. So I'm a member of a church in Georgia. So if I have a lot of friends here, so how can we kind of connect?
Every scout group has and Alu and Ron will pick up on something else that is in the works. But there are mechanisms already set up to set up a scout group and a scouting organization. And like anything else, parents, you have to vet your leadership. And you're only going to be able to vet them by sticking close and seeing how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't, you do not give up your right to parenting because, you need to get your hair done and you don't want to, and I'm, don't want to come off as too negative, but you have to be present and see what's happening and what your child is being involved with. And I say that because one organization that I was involved in for many, many years, we had a community center. It was open up as a storefront, and all the people that were involved, I mean, they were so committed to the community, absolutely 100%. But I was be amazed that parents would drop their children off and not even walk in to see what was going on. And it was it just amazed me that would happen. But Alu, maybe you can jump into what Carla talked about. What can be done in terms of their involvement. And I know there's some things that are at play that I'm not sure if you're at liberty to talk about, but that might help with organizations who are not in Detroit that might want to be involved in us going to Africa.
So I think one of the things that we are working on right now is because this is an experience that I feel is important for every African American youth to go through. We don't want to have the.
I think we may have lost you, Alu. Can you hear us?
Alu, chime back in. We're going to chime right back in.
This would be something that would help.
He must be in a bad area.
It must be. And Ron, I'm not sure if you can hear us yet, if you're ready to come on board, but as soon as you can, we can pick up the conversation if we can get Alu in an area that he will be able to talk more about it. And I won't say much more because what I know about it is, is not enough to dig into it.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you, Olu.
So our goal is to open this up. We have been having conversations with the World Conference of Mayors, and they are very interested in our program, where we could open it up for other cities. So, for example, if your church is interested in taking boys through this experience, we have a curriculum that the boys would have to go through in preparing them before they take off for Africa. So we have to go through that so that they can. It's like kind of what Amari was saying. It's a leadership development training. We have to ensure we set these young men for success. They have to understand what is this rites of passage, what is the journey, what's my responsibility, and how are we going to get together as a group before we go to this take on this journey. Because the success of these programs is being able to understand the fundamentals of why this is and what is my responsibility and what am I supposed to do. So we are open to have conversations with you, with your church in Atlanta. If you have the boys, if they're in a scout troop, Omari would be able to work with your scout master collaboratively. If there's no scout master, we'll figure something out. You don't have to be a scout in a scout troop to participate in this program, but when you have a troop, the organization is easier.
And the other thing is that we talk about vetting the adults who you leave your child to. In a sense, them having reached a certain level in the scouting program, you're almost vetting the young man or even the young woman that they will be able to handle what's coming to them on this trip because they're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taking them to Cedar Point, or Six Flags, I think is what they have in Georgia.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not that type of deal. You're taking this person on an international journey, and you want to be comfortable that you are with a young person who can deal with the experience, and that with a certain amount of certainty that this young person is going to be all right. They're going to be able to adapt, and you can trust what will happen with this young person. But I've been blessed to have some very good families that have brought their young men into scouting, and that makes a world of difference. And there's been some years where we've had some families that come in, some young men who've come in with challenges. And so those challenges, depending on where they are in their growth and maturity, may make them ready for this trip, and it may not, because there's a lot at stake, and you want everyone to be safe, and you want everyone to come back in a good situation. And you also want them to respect the people who are welcoming us into their village, who are welcoming us into their homes. So there's a lot of things to be considered. Hey, Brother Spears.
We got Ryan on. Hey, Ryan. Finally, we got you, sir.
What's going on, good people? I've been listening, though. You guys are always on point, but I'm at a Morehouse recruiting event. You talk about train up a young man. It's always the pipeline to Mother Morehouse. So
yeah,
that's where they should all end up.
You down here in my city? I didn't know you were here.
I'm in Detroit right now, but I was in Atlanta 2 weekends ago for homecoming.
Okay. Wow. So, man of God, you gotta fill us in on what's down the pipe and how you got in this organization and what you're doing with these young men.
Great. No, well, thank you for having me on and for talking about this important subject. I when I had finished school, I came back home, and my father had a fraternity brother who was retiring from Oakland University, And I went to his retirement party. He talked about he was going to be, you know, when you had a retirement party, you asked the question, what are you going to be doing with this next chapter? And he said that he was going to be spending half of his time in Africa and the other half here, and he's starting a rites of passage program. And I said, sign me up, you know. And so I became one of the teachers. And I heard Omari mention that I was one of the adult leaders of the rites of passage program. He started, this gentleman, Dr. Manuel Pearson, who is an ancestor now, but he started this program, and I was one of the teachers, and he had elevated me to be in charge of the young men who get to take the trip to Africa, which are the 13-year-olds. And so Alu, who you've been talking to, it's his village, as he's told you, that we go to. And so Alu and I have been pretty much the key figures in this program now. And outside of that, that's kind of how I started getting involved back. And I'm talking like back in the 90s, back in like 94, 95. And then right after the Million Man March, and which I think was October of 95, that's when I was just like, okay, let me go find something to get involved in. And this was the program that I got led to be a part of. So, and as they say, the rest has been history.
Now, okay, so where we are today, they were telling us about the gap. There was a large gap before you guys were able to go back. So what was what was so important about getting the kids back to the rites of passage program for you guys?
I'll take a stab at that one first too, because I've kind of heard when Omari was mentioning the gap, so I do know that there was some context to it. There were two things. The girls, we have a program for girls as well. I don't know if they've told you. The girls used to go to Egypt, and then tourism started getting a little crazy in Egypt in the 90s. So the girls started going to West Africa with us. But in the late 90s, it was really after 9/11. 9/11 is what really, we haven't been since 2001. So last year was our first time going since then. You can't really just blame 9/11 because there were some other things politically going on in the church with the leadership. But we'll just blame 9/11 rather than politics. But the main thing was there are so many parents that were telling me we need to start this program again. And, Dr. Pearson was no longer with us, and I knew the amount of work that he put in, and he was retired. I'm not retired. And so I just knew that it would be a huge effort to fill those shoes. He was one of those guys that it probably takes three or more people to fill his shoes. He was one of those types of persons, and he was retired. And so me still working and being a father and all of that, I just knew I couldn't do it by myself. And so that's where the partnership with Omari made sense, with the scouting program, especially with the history of that. And so it made sense to do that type of partnership and do this type of trip to just really, really go into the African origins of scouting and culminate it with this trip. So that was sort of the, kind of the reason for the gap, but the sense of urgency to pull it back. And then since we took young people on the trip back in the 90s, these are not young people anymore. They're grown men. Right. And so during the pandemic, I interviewed a number of them and asking, because, you ask a 13-year-old a trip to Africa, a lot of people are going to be like, man, they're not going to really remember that or take the full. These kids in their 40s now with wives and kids and everything are still talk about this trip and the impact that it had. So, it was just those things just said, we got to do this again because we see now the receipts, the impact that this type of trip has, because that's what you got a lot of programs that talk a lot of good things, but show me your receipts and show me your receipts, show me the impact. How do you measure the impact? And when we look at these guys, two of them went to Howard, one went to Morehouse. Like I said, it's a pipeline to Black male excellence, and that's what it's all about, you know. But that's where I'm at right now. It's an HBCU college fair. I stepped away from the Morehouse table to hang out with y'all for a little bit. But yeah, no, that was the reason for the gap. But at the end of the day, we had receipts. We have receipts.
Now look at here. Now, one of the things I know parents may be trying to think about financially, how can they afford this? Is this affordable? How do you guys prepare them financially? Because some of the fathers went as well as some of the mothers. So what is the plan of action, you know, with getting families to actually take the trip with you guys?
Yeah, back in the 90s, when we took the trip, because in the 90s, I took the trip about 6 different times back in the 90s since I got involved. And the church would pay for 2/3 of the trip through donations from the church. So the young people would have to pay like $800 back in the 90s. And the church would pay the rest. Now, last year, the trip, we were fortunate to do a lot of good fundraising, and we were able to pay for the entire trip for the young people. The parents had to pay. The parents that chose to come, they had to pay their way. And not all parents could come. So you know, we just gave them a much advanced notice of how much it would cost in a payment plan, and you know, we had to work with some of the parents, but that was okay. We were willing to do that. But most of this was funded by donations to the
donations.
Church.
Yeah, commitment from church members.
And we're talking about 13 kids. I travel a lot, okay? We're not talking about 13 kids going to Philadelphia, LA. We're talking about 13 kids going to Africa. That is very expensive. You talking about food, you talking about travel to and from the airport, all of that. So I really commend your church and your members for standing up, you know, and making sure that this trip was possible for these kids whose lives will never be the same, you know. Now, one of the things Olu was talking about, he was talking about if your church does not have a program, that you guys are, we can implement programs at church throughout the world now, right? So how should they get in touch with you guys? Who should they get in touch with to even consider having this program at their church?
You have the big three right here. You have
there's 2 answers.
You have Christ,
there's 2 answers to that,
and you have GM right here.
The scouting program, in touch with Ari, they're scouting that wants to practice something like this.
We're breaking up on us, Ron. So I'm not sure if you.
Spot, Ron.
Yeah.
Who you get your internet through?
Is it good now or still breaking up?
You're coming through now.
Is it still good?
Yeah.
You're good.
Okay. I was just saying, get in touch with Omari if you have a scout troop that would like to do this, but just knowing that y'all will have to pay, you know, your way and bring the chaperones. You know, so your Boy Scout troop can get in touch with the local, you know, our scout organization here.
So if they're already established troop somewhere, then again they can talk with me, and then we can work out the logistics of everything from the scouting program. They would not need to actually go to the local district council first. They should, because the council's not going to tell them anything about our program because it's internal.
Okay. Olu, what was you gonna say, Olu?
Oh no, I was just saying you have the big three right here. I'm Chrysler, Ron is Ford, and then Omari is GM, and we will put this together.
Also, okay, so what about the girls program? Because I noticed that you guys, we primarily focused on the Boy Scouts. So what is the point of contact for the programs for the young ladies?
For now, and I think we lost Ron. For now, unless things have changed, I think that point of contact can still be Ron Spears. There is someone at the church that may take the reins for the girls program. But to my knowledge, the last time I spoke with him about it, Ron would still be the contact for the girls.
Okay. Okay.
And that is something that the women in the village have been asking for, because they had the experience of putting up for two groups of girls that came, I think it was 98 and 2000. And so, it's, what about the girls? When are the girls coming back? So we would be able to facilitate a good program for the girls. The only difference is that we will not know what happens in there with the girls, because they always tell us what happens in the bush with the boys stays in the bush, and what happens with the women stays with the women. But again, that is something that young women in the village go through. They also go through the women's rites of passage as well.
Now, what is the how long are they staying in the bush? How long are they staying in there now?
We did what, 3 days?
3, and because it was a rainy season, they actually stayed one of the nights indoors, because I could just say 1 or 2. I can't remember now. But so it's a truncated program, to say the least.
Wow. And the women, now my aunt was telling me, Aunt Cynthia, she is on. She was telling me how you guys, everyone got new names. So
Except me.
Because your name is already African.
Yeah. But what I mean, like, to carry that, I felt some kind of way about that, being an American. Like, I want a name. I want to know my name, So I was like, I really want to go myself, even though I'm an adult, but I felt like I wish that I would have had that opportunity to actually go and know my, name, get a name change, So the significance of the name change, and how was that implemented? Like when they go over there, how do you know who you're gonna get? What name are you gonna get? How is that carried on?
What we did with the boys is that each of our young men, we already communicated with the village how many young men we bring in, and they were able to assign families to these young men. So the mothers that came with their sons actually automatically were assigned to the family that their young men were assigned to. And that's how they were able to get those names attached to the family of the boy, because now this boy is a member of the Bojang family. So obviously, mom would be a member of that family as well. So, but over the years, we have had even those that didn't come with their sons, but they came in with the group. They also are part of that naming ceremony, and they were able to have names given to them during that naming ceremony as well. The elders in the village choose names. Names are very, very important in African cultures. And one of the things that traditionally you have to be very careful about is the name you give your child. if you're naming your child after somebody else, they always say that that child will always carry 7 habits of that individual.
Woo!
So don't name your child after a fool because they'll be a fool, things like that. But naming a child is very sacred in the African culture.
And I want to just add something too. So you by all means, if you go to Africa and get a name, go through a naming ceremony, then do so. But every Kwanzaa season, there are naming ceremonies. And if you go to a Kwanzaa program at your church or a local community center, they typically will have a naming ceremony. And so many of the people who I became active with as a young man went through naming was introduced through Kwanzaa and through organizations where they went and changed the name. And so the changing of the name, as Alu talked about, is very important in African culture. It's important to all cultures, and this is a side story, but it's an important one. As a college student, I was in a class on immigrant literature, and in this class, one of the books talked about, I think it was a Swedish family. I could be wrong, but the dad was named Hansa, and the son was named Parhansa, which means son of Hansa. And so this is like my first time really having experience with someone who's talking about their names and how important those names were. And that really is when I started to look for when I would keep the name that I had, if I would change my name. And because of that experience in the Pan-African and the Black nationalist communities in Detroit, that I was exposed to information about the names and how important they are. And we talked about Kunta Kinte earlier, and how he was beaten into submission to accept the name. He accepted it verbally, but his spirit was still Kunta, not Toby. And so it is extremely important that we take very seriously the naming of our children, and not just approach it haphazardly if we have the knowledge to do so. People perish from a lack of knowledge. And you go through the Bible, for example, how important the names are, and I forget who was now. Had a story about the in the Bible where his name was changed.
Yes.
And so, right, Abraham, name was changed. Paul's name was changed.
Yes.
If you look at our history, Sojourner Truth, and I forgot what her name was, what she was being called fire, but she wasn't born in this country in an enslaved experience, and her name was Sojourner Truth. That was a choice to change the name. Malcolm X, name change, to Malik El-Haj Shabazz. So there's all this going on and over again where people are looking for identity. They're looking for culture. They're looking for reinforcement of who they are. Mm-hmm. And so you can't look past the name and not see how relevant and important that is.
Wow. So, I mean, this is all good information. A lot of you guys who maybe came on late, we were talking about the different programs. We got Omari Sankofa, and he's a Scoutmaster for the Boy Scouts. We got Olu Nasi, and he is one of the instrumental rites of passage trip with the rites of passage trip to Africa, as well as Ryan Spears. So basically, in a nutshell, we've been on here, time is well spent. What is the takeaway? I want you guys to give us the takeaway from this trip, and what the significance and importance of this trip to Africa is.
I think that the significance of this program, we young men born in America, all we see is the same thing. We know that we see injustice, we see so many things, but I think the most significant of being in this program and even coming over to Africa is one, for the first time, you are part of the majority.
Mm.
You in a country where everybody looks like you, or the majority of the people look like you for the first time. The second thing that I think helps is that you helping this young man. We all talk about, I am African American, but how do I understand that African part of it? So it's basically a rebirth of an individual, finding yourself. Because after you come back, I don't think you will be the same person that you have been before, because now you have gone through, you have seen so much, you've experienced so much that you never thought you would experience. And you have been in contact with people, and you have gained so much wisdom. So like I said earlier, we hear about it takes a village. What does that even mean? But when these boys came to the village, people come from all other villages. They stopped what they were doing. They stopped their farming. They stopped work. We were there. During the weekend, you would have even seen more people. During the week, people stopped. They moved away from work to come and celebrate these 13 boys that we brought from America. And you look around and you're like, wow, this is all for me. I am special. I have felt something that I've never felt in my life. Strangers, like my father always said, Ron was lucky to meet my father. But my father always tell us, there's nothing like strangers, they're friends we've never met. And I believed in that. Everywhere I go, just give me 5 minutes, you will think that we've been together for 1,000 years. But I think that these young men are just going to find themselves, and it's a renewal of who they are after they come back.
Wow. I love that. Thank you, Olu.
Thank you.
Ron, are you in a good spot while we got you in a good spot?
Hey, well, while I am, let me say my piece. And on top of everything Alu said, the experience. One thing because I've probably taken now about 7 or 8 different groups of young men and women to this experience, and it's different for each individual. Every year, there's going to be someone who is, for their very first time in life, getting on an airplane. Okay, so let's start with that part. And then there's always experiences, because those of us who have traveled a lot know the importance of travel, just in general, seeing the world in a different perspective. But we had to compensate. This was back in the 90s when one young man, back then they had you go to CVS or whatever and get those little cameras, disposable cameras, right? Where you take the pictures and you just give them the whole thing and they develop the film. Well, his parents gave him like 4 of those, and he went through the first one just at JFK, New York, in the airport. So we had to take his other cameras away from him because he ain't never been nowhere. So he took up all his pictures just in the airport alone. So travel is the travel aspect of it for these young folks is one of the most significant experiences. Now, traveling to Africa, everything that Alu said, just knowing that you know, you come from this rich people, and break those stereotypes of what you thought about Africa or what the media and the narrative have given you about Africa. It has a very rich history. It has a very, very metropolis city, in addition to, you know, just huts and you know, places in a typical rural environment. But you get to understand, you get to sit at the feet of elders and understand.
Back, Ron.
Yeah, take 4 steps back.
Hey, Ron, if you're in Michigan, go connect through Oakland University. Don't connect through Morehouse.
Am I okay?
Okay, you're okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop walking. How about that part?
All
But
right.
yeah, no, that's the main thing right there. But the young men who are now in their 40s talking about the trip, they talk about Goree Island more than anything else. That experience of understanding that we all came from Goree. 75% of us in America came through that slave castle and was enslaved, and the significance of that. They want to take their kids to Goree Island. So those are two of the biggest takeaways that I've kind of gathered from the impact that this program has had.
Thank you, Ron. Mr. Sankofa.
Yes.
Your turn. You know, for me, I've been trying to get to Africa for a very long time, and to go with young men that, in some instances I had known since they were 5 years old. And it was amazing to have that experience. So this is a personal takeaway. To be there with a young man who had been in our troop and whose father had passed away. He was a scout leader, and to see that young man come on the trip, to be there with a young man who I know was in foster care and was in our troop, and to be there with him, to see him, because we brought some of the boys that had gone away to college, and so we still open the experience up to them, to be there with them. And so when I have talked with these young men in the past about Africa, had discussions about who they are and why I don't like the N word, and I don't care if you call it NIGGA, you don't get a pass from me, because it's you don't get a pass on that. Now when I have these discussions about who they are and their history, it has more context than it once did. Yeah. And you give them a point of reference now that other young men may not have. And it's so important when we can give our young people that experience, as Ron talked about, that experience of travel. And to be a part of that is just it's amazing. And like I said, I've been a mentor for a very long time. I had opportunity to mentor a few young men from my high school. And so, if you've been to Detroit, are you from Detroit, Carla? Yes, I'm born and raised. I'm born and raised in Detroit, Redford High School. Okay, so Belle Island. Belle Isle. Mm-hmm. Well, we call it Belle Isle. Belle Isle. We got to Detroit. Belle Isle. So you're from Detroit when I say Belle Isle, not Belle Isle. Belle Isle. And so where Cody High School is, that neighborhood is about 20-minute drive, 25-minute drive to go to Belle Island. So my mentee had never, as a 11th grader, had never been to Belle Isle. And lives in Detroit. That's sad. Lives in Detroit. And so to go to Africa with some young man, oh man. That's a whole nother level. We had a question. Okay, so what part of Africa was the trip? Alu.
The Gambia.
The Gambia.
We
Yeah,
call it
and tell them
Smiling Coast.
tell them where the Gambia sits in terms of Senegal, just to point of
The
reference.
Gambia this is Senegal on the west coast of the Atlantic, and this is the Gambia right inside of Senegal.
Yep.
The Gambia, usually people call it, or if you Google it, the Smiling Coast of Africa. What will come out is the Gambia.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to forget that question before we got off. Now, Cynthia, you're the only lady on here. So I know you said you ain't feeling well. Can you give us a little summary before we get off here?
I guess I would start off with good people, surrounding yourself with good people. And I believe that everybody that's on the panel right now, they are good people. And I'm glad to know them and have had an opportunity to not only, like I mentioned earlier, to be a part of the troop, but to be having the opportunity to travel over to Africa. I mean, it's deep, and for me, I don't take it lightly. I know you were mentioning earlier about getting like an African name and things like that. I believe like once you actually go over there and experience it, it's just such an amazing experience. And I know I'm not the same person after going over there. I hope that more young people, both boys and girls, have an opportunity to be a part of like not only the troop but the Rites of Passage program. Because it's just an opportunity of a lifetime, I believe. So, yeah. And the people of it. Oh, I wanted to mention something. And Ron, Lou, I'm sorry. Maybe you want to speak to it. About the things that have been done over there as far as like the water system implementation, as well as the marketplace for the women. I think that's like an important thing to talk about as well. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit before we go.
So thanks very much for bringing that up. One of the things that Hartford has always committed the institution to is that, and Pastor Adams have always said that, Dr. Pearson have always said that they understand the fact that Gambia, the majority of the Gambia is a Muslim country. We are not there to change their ways of belief. We are not missionaries that are coming to change you to become Christian. We are here to connect with our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so in connecting with our culture, Hartford also understood the disadvantages that have occurred or that continue to exist in the village in terms of clean water, education. At some point, while Dr. Pearson was living, we had over 200 to 300 young people in high schools throughout the country who have been sponsored to go to school. We continue that tradition. And right now, Ron and I are overseeing over 21 scholarships of young people that are attending the University of the Gambia vocational school or business school. These are some things we're doing, and most of all these kids are from the village. We, Hartford, also have helped the village. We sponsored water system, and that water system, the village grew so big from when the water system that was built in '95, and so the village grew up from 1,000 to almost 3,000 people. In 2018, we built a newer water system. And now the whole village is one of the few villages in the Gambia that enjoys clean water with no bill to pay.
Wow.
And so those are some of the things that we have done. And Cynthia, I just got a message from the village a couple of days ago, and this is new to the press right now. The Chromebooks we took, the young men in the village were able to start their first computer lab in the village.
Wow. That is so good. Oh my.
And
That's
they're
great.
utilizing those Chromebooks to do their homework, do their projects, and now they're also learning about robotics, which
Yeah.
is
And
huge.
how many did we bring over? I forgot how many Chromebooks we.
We brought 28, I
Yeah,
think,
28. Yeah, something.
and we gave 14 to about 16 to the scholarship recipients so they could do their homework. Because during COVID, when everybody went virtual, the same thing happened in Africa. But
Mm-hmm.
young people in Africa that don't have a computer, a laptop, if you're from the village, they were using their cell phones to do homework.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So the Chromebooks actually helped. So the other 14 that were left in the building that Hartford actually helped build for the women in the village to start their own market. In fact, we're going to be transferring some funds so the women would start the market because they go to the city to buy food. Now they're going to have their own women's cooperative shop where they're going to buy and sell stuff in the village. They're also going to be able to sell their own vegetables that they grow at this particular place. So it's going to be a one-stop place for all of them. And we are very happy that Hartford is contributing to the socio-economic development and education in the village.
Wow. And that's what it's about at the end of the day, and not even just taking the children over there. Look at the impact that you guys have, the impact, from you going over there. And I commend your church, Hartford Church. I really commend your pastor for rallying behind you guys and not just talking, but financially, rallying behind you guys and making
Huge.
an impact. So they're happy to see y'all when y'all come over there as well. They're like, hey, you're here and give, So that's a blessing. So first off, I am so happy you guys came on. Everybody who logged in tonight, please share, tag. Many people watch these lives. It's on YouTube as well as on Facebook. After we get off to share this information, I put the contact for Scoutmaster Omari, his Man of Peace. He's on Facebook. Lou, I didn't see a social media for you. Maybe you can text it to me if you do have one.
I saw
Okay. I also tagged Ron Spears. He's doing amazing things. And also our wonderful photographer, Cynthia Ellis. I put her contact. If you go to her Instagram page, and also I had uploaded some of the pictures that was taken when they went to Africa, and they were absolutely amazing. That's how I connected with these guys when I went to Detroit. So, guys, I thank y'all for your time. Your time is valuable. You don't have to take out the time to come on here, but I am so grateful that you joined us tonight. I may be reaching out to y'all again in the near future. But also, I would like to maybe connect with you guys when I come back up to Detroit on some things as well. So I thank y'all for coming on, and please share, please like, please tag, and reach out to them. It's not just for the Boy Scouts, but they do have programs for the young ladies. Thank y'all for coming on. Thank you, Mr. Omari, Olu, and Mr. Ryan, and my auntie Cynthia, my auntie sister. She's actually my auntie sister. Thank you for coming on and not feeling well. Thank you, guys. I appreciate y'all.
All righty.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Very welcome. Thanks. Good night.
Bye.